here today. But we are here to discuss Y Project Spring Summer 19. We're kind of in the midst of Paris now, and so it's quite interesting to talk about a brand that kind of is known for taking the banal and making it beautiful. Y Project often gets lumped in with quite a number of other brands, sort of the Vetements, GmbH, Off-White, but on this Paris schedule where we've seen quite a lot of theatrics, it will be an interesting show to unpick. So before we dive into our discussion, I'm going to let my lovely set of panelists introduce themselves. Danielle, we'll start with you, and so there's no confusion, we'll go like this.
Hi, I'm Danielle Radojcin, and I'm a journalist and broadcaster.
Hi, I'm Britt Lloyd, and I'm a photographer.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Gonsalves, and I'm a freelance journalist.
Hi, I'm Charlotte Roberts, I'm a stylist.
Thank you guys. Thank you everyone for joining me today on this very sunny day. I am Lara Johnson-Wheeler and I'm features editor at Show Studio. So, Y Project? I think we're all quite fresh to be looking at these images. The show only happened a few hours ago. But before we kind of really look at this collection, I kind of want to take us back to our kind of, so let's not head straight in, but I'm kind of interested in what Y Project is as a brand. Glenn Martens is kind of credited with having brought the brand back to life after its founder Johan Zarti sadly died in 2013. So I'm interested in what people kind of think of Y Project. I mentioned before that it gets kind of lumped in with these other brands, particularly because I think Y Project does very cleverly this sort of thing that's very much in vogue, which is taking normcore items, everyday garments, and twisting them and riffing them. So, what is Y Project? What do we think of the brand? Britt, I'm going to look to you. I knew you didn't want me to. It's like that thing in class when someone looks at you.
Well, I guess I think Y Project is quite, as you said, it's got this kind of normcore aesthetic, which is quite popular, but I think what's quite interesting about it is it does seem to make you think, and to me it seems like it's not Vetements, because it's not just taking a pair of jeans and trying to put a label on it and making it a cool brand. It actually does delve into those items and twist them in a way that makes your own mind think about them. I think it's super creative. I think whenever you see the garments and hold the garments, like you could stand there and spend 20 minutes delving through it. Whenever you get it, you never initially know how to wear it or put it on. I think it's an exciting men's and women's brand that actually is kind of pushing the boundaries of design, but not having to be in a kind of couturier way. It's actually, so it kind of reaches out to that younger audience where you're like, okay, I'm a young person interested in fashion. I don't want to wear just a pair of jeans. I want to wear something kind of interesting, but something I can still, go to the pub in or whatever. So I think it's kind of bringing together creativity, but also keeping it quite fresh and relevant and this kind of youthful market.
And you've shot the garments before, you've tested them.
Which is always, I was going to say, my first actual introductions to Y Project is shooting it for Machine here. And it's funny, like whenever we shot them, it'd always be a question of how would you wear it, but that kind of makes it exciting, and it means they are these kind of constructions, and I think Glenn Martin's always said that construction is kind of the base of what he does, and I think that shows that he is a true designer, and he takes the garments and actually turns them into something completely different from what their original, from where they started at. And I don't know, I just think
he properly deconstructs it, and like a kind of like Virgil, which is, he's almost like more, he remarkets them, whereas, Glenn deconstructs them and makes something entirely new. And almost he's kind of amped it up, so it kind of started quite Rick Owens-y and quite plain, but architectural, and then he's almost gone the opposite way, whereas brands like Vetements, Balenciaga, Off-White have almost started a bit more hypey and kind of diluted slightly more as they go on, or at least the hype is diluted in some way. But I think he's kind of got the opposite ascendance, I guess, which is kind of interesting.
So he's kind of pushing it and pushing it.
Yeah, if you look even between seasons, there's such leaps and bounds. It was very muted. Then 3 seasons ago from this, they got the kind of the ball gowns in and the silks. And then this is very different from last season to me. Obviously, you've got kind of all the classic tropes, like the trousers and the jeans and the this section. But it does all feel very different and experimental.
I think also, coming from Antwerp, people often compare Glenn Martens to Margiela, and I'm really interested in this. Obviously, you know, Margiela is the king of deconstruction, and you know, having seen what John Galliano is doing at Margiela right now, I wonder if Y Project is kind of coming in to take that throne, to be the brand that does what Margiela did before John Galliano.
Well, I think it's really interesting, the effect of Margiela on the generation of designers that are coming through now, because it's so apparent, especially even if you go to like the St. Martin's shows, it's so apparent. And with Vetements, everyone was kind of saying, it's not new, Margiela did it before. And that's true, but just because it's not new doesn't mean it's not valid. And I think there's something that really resonates now. But it's interesting, obviously, because he's Belgian, so it's like, and he studied, was it architecture or interior design before? So you can see the way that comes through in his work, as you were saying, about how it's really design-led. It's all about kind of exploring it and taking it apart. But yeah, there's a very strong link between, I think, Galliano's Margiela and this. And I think maybe it's just that's what resonates now.
What do you think that link is?
I don't know if it's nostalgia. I don't know if it's kind of finding beauty in, as you said, the banal earlier, because people do, I think, especially, well, when you talk about couture, it's very difficult to justify when there's such extremes of equality, something that's just beautiful on the surface, I think, personally. So I think designers are trying to channel that and go further and deeper, and they're trying to respond a lot more emotionally. But I don't know more specifically what it is about deconstruction.
I would say that there's a to me, when I look at John Galliano's Margiela and Y Projects, to me there's a difference in the fact that John Galliano's designs always seem much more romantic. And I think with what Glenn Martin's is doing, it feels a lot more urban and influence of sort of clubbing and sportswear, a lot more sportswear influence.
Yeah, there's a lot more. It's more kind of his influences are 30 years on from Galliano's, and they're just kind of channeled through a similar process, maybe.
I think going back to Margiela, the original Margiela, I think the difference there again would be, it'd be interesting to see Glenn Martin's, if what's so great is the way he does things that are always slightly jarring, and it's not necessarily commercial, but in fact, ultimately it is commercially successful. So, and that's kind of amazing, and it's really cool, and I really love the stuff. But what's interesting about Margiela is that his pieces have really endured. It'll be interesting to see if he can come up with some things that really endure.
The Uggs are iconic.
I was wondering when someone was going to mention the Uggs, because these pieces that that Glenn Martin is coming up with, you know, this feeling of having garments that are, you know, quite normcore garments. It made me think of when Phoebe Philo did the Birkenstocks and Christopher Kane did Crocs. This thing of doing a piece and making it the high-low kind of novelty thing. I don't know, I wonder if that is a lot about Y Project's commerciality, or if that's, you know, if they're able to kind of tap into that as well as doing riffing on these pieces.
It's a clever way to tap into a whole new audience, isn't it? And also, it's a commercial enterprise. I just saw in the press release, they've just, for this collection, he's on a collaboration with Linda Farrow on sunglasses, and I think it's, but with the Uggs thing, a lot of it was sort of hype, and it was an amazing social media campaign. I googled Glenn Martin's today, and nearly every result, it revolves around those Ugg boots.
That's so good.
Which I'm sure he's thrilled about.
Yeah, it's just like the irreverence, isn't it, though? And I think he takes objects that are the everyday, so to us seem like normal or whatever, and like from 20 years from now, they might, like the Uggs might be a museum piece, who knows?
But I think that's what makes Y Project feel quite relevant, and I think even more interesting, because it is taking items that people see in kind of their everyday, and then it is sort of giving them kind of turning them into these sculptures or these art pieces. Whereas I think, as we said with the Off-White or the Vetements, it's taking something but then dialing it down. Whereas because he's kind of expanding it.
Vetements has done it as well. Like they did the Crocs that were kind of like Frankenstein.
It's also that thing of saying I'm really cool because I'm going to take something that's the ne plus ultra of uncool, Crocs, an Ugg boot, and make it cool.
Yeah.
And that's what Vetements does
Yeah.
as well.
I mean, there is also kind of, you know, this sense of wit and like, you know, you don't quite know who's being trolled. That was like always the thing about Vetements. People are like, are they laughing at us? Are we in on the joke? Who knows?
Yeah.
And, you know, Robin Givhan wrote a really good piece about fashion trolling you. And she wrote about the Crocs and the Ugg boots and actually prairie dresses as well. Robin Givhan at the Washington Post. It's really, really good. I'll share the link. But basically what she was sort of talking about, what she was questioning was, you know, kind of almost the morality of a designer doing that, of taking a garment that is sort of seen as perhaps lowbrow or, you know, a commonplace garment and making it very, very high fashion and very expensive. You know, would a person be wearing like, you know, an Ugg boot on the street as opposed to a Y Project Ugg boot? You know,
it's like the context of it, isn't it? Because like he did Ugg as like an irreverence kind of thing, and the problem with brands like Vetements is that they did it with workwear, and then that becomes like a whole morality issue because you're recontextualizing workwear from like lower class typically jobs and making it some stupid luxury item, which I do think is offensive.
And then you tip into appropriation.
And like it's problematic and all those things. But with Uggs, it's like the most basic, middle of the road, but also super comfortable and fantastic boots. And you're just making it even more fun.
I'd like to think that like he also went into the Ugg market because they do have some functionality in what they do.
Yeah, exactly.
They are a luxury item in terms of how they feel and how they look. So I think that with that sense, he's not being so, he's using what actually inspires him with his own work, and then he kind of chose the right product that fits in with him better.
And we're looking at the campaign image now, which like, it's just, it's so fun, it's brilliantly kind of emblematic of what I think they were doing with this, which is to just sort of be kind of funny about it. And, you know, Y Project has always kind of been noted for like drawing on historical codes. And I think, I don't know, when I looked...
Do you know how much they cost?
I actually don't. I would really like to find out. Maybe we can
Their campaigns are always really good. Like Arno does all of them. And he's like, it's just so brilliant. And I think they have a real kind of language between them and like the stylist. It doesn't feel like he's ever like, okay, we're going to get the X, you know, photographer to do this campaign and do it.
It feels so organic and refreshing to see as well, I think.
Yeah.
And I also think what's nice about what they do in their visual work and in their designs as well is they're not trying to make fashion perfect in a way. I think all their casting is quite refreshing, and I think the way they approach their photography, and it's not like perfect, it's not all perfectly lit. It's just, as you said, it's how they're reacting to things and how they're emotionally reacting to what he's designing and what they feel works well. And it's quite nice to see in this current day when sometimes all the campaigns are these perfect girls with the perfect face and the perfect makeup wearing and looking unstoppable, whereas
I mean, that's very much, sorry, I just, you know, just thinking about that, you know, they use their friends and family, interns and whatever. And I think there's no denying that Y Project clothes look really, really good in a fashion photograph. They, you know, they work, they look really amazing. But, you know, apart from maybe like a few of the sort of easier pieces, I don't know when I've seen people on the street looking really, really good in Y Project. Like, there are so many.
But then you look at like when you got, who was on that tab at the end, when it was like just the shopping.
Yeah.
Like
so
that,
on matches.
on matches, for instance. Like, look at that. That's so wearable.
It's very wearable.
But it's, can we scroll down a
Can we
tiny
scroll
bit?
down a little? Thank you.
Sorry. Yeah, like that looks, you know? But I mean, maybe not those so much, but...
But they do, you know, they do kind of tread this line between like, the wearable and the unwearable, which,
the absurd. It's
you
like
know, which Vetements did do. And like, you know, people would think, yes, that is slightly absurd because it is just like technically a pair of jeans, but they've been made asymmetrically for £405.
And I think what he tries to do as well is do this thing of how everybody can wear Y Project differently, and you wear it depending on your personality, what your style is, your age, your size, etc. Yeah.
Also, he's been talking about genderless fashion for a really long time, way before it became trendy. So he is quite avant-garde in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. But again, I think with the gender thing, it's again how he's reacting to things. It's that he's designing not in a way of thinking, okay, this is for a man, this is for a woman. He's got, I don't know, and he has quite a small team, so it might be, I don't know, an intern in front of him, whether it's a boy or a girl, it doesn't matter who's there. He just reacts to
fit whoever.
Yeah.
Also, don't you think that is his age as well?
Yeah.
Because I think that's quite true of a lot of designers of his generation. It's not necessarily something that is thought about.
Yeah.
It's about, I mean, it's how we dress as well.
Yeah.
Which I think is true and why Project feels quite kind of approachable and a bit more.
And also he doesn't have, you know, a parent company that's saying, put out this, put out this, put out this, hit
Yeah.
these markers.
But it's also a bit sexier than like Vetements, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
No, it's definitely sexier.
Which
I mean, there's
they're
definitely
being scared of, I think, in terms of doing like cool brands. Like you're either like a Versace, sexy bombshell kind of thing, but like all those hype brands are so. I feel like they kind of don't celebrate like the female form at all.
What is
They
really
try and erase
interesting-
it in a way.
Yeah, exactly.
It is really interesting the way that Y Project sort of tap into that thing of femininity, something that's quite kind of prominent in London, you know, with designers like Simone Rocha and Molly Goddard and, you know, designers who really picked up on this thing that, you know, being girly has and is and has for a few seasons now been seen as very cool. And that didn't really translate to lots of these sort of streetwear brands. And you can see that here, you know, he uses fabrics like tulle, and these evening dresses are kind of cut up and sliced. So
You see, I don't quite think it's girly. To me, whereas Molly, yeah, she's doing that sort of alt punk girly thing, which is subverting girliness. To me, Glenn Martin's is subversive, but it's quite a tough, it's almost, I think he talks about the genderless stuff, but then also when he does feminine, it's like quite hyper feminine. You think of like Rihanna wearing those boots on the cover of, was it 10 or some magazine? She looked amazing.
But I think that's nice. I think that's the nice thing that Y Project does. I think as a girl, where you don't want to wear frilly. Okay, sorry, that's too. Like, if you don't want to wear the Molly Goddard type dress, but you still want to look girly in a way. I don't think the only way you can look girly and feminine is wearing a kind of tulle dress. I think you can.
But it's more elegant than girly,
Yeah.
I'd say.
I think it's quite
sophisticated.
fierce.
Yeah.
That is a bit like John Galliano.
I mean, if you look up, you know, if you scroll up to sort of the very top, there are these, thank you, there are these kind of very, very high cut, like camel toe giving, like,
Yeah, but then like
denim
the
pants.
the top. It's just like it's how girls dress now, isn't it? Like that one in the middle. Stop 1 sec. Sorry, that one.
Yeah.
it's like typical. I think of like how like fashion girls are kind of dressed to look
bustier, like a nice,
like a high-waisted like sweat panty thing, and then like a statement earring.
And those boots have sort of become a bit of a trademark of his, because he seems to be carrying them over from season to season.
Well, this sort of playing with volumes as well kind of works in with that, because, you know, whereas, you know, he is putting these quite streamlined shapes and these denim trousers, there are these very sort of, you know, would be traditionally unflattering shapes too. So we're looking at the Spring Summer 19 collection anyway, we have dived in. So, you know, what are our initial thoughts about, you know, Charlotte, you mentioned there are just sort of leaps from season to season. Does this feel like something different?
Yeah, there's a lot more dresses in this season than there have been like previously. Obviously, it started with the kind of like more traditional Y Project tropes, like the like high-waisted deconstructed jeans and stuff. And then as we go kind of to scroll towards and down to the bottom, it becomes almost like more of a typical show, you know, like the run of show in normal shows like a Fendi, you'd have the kind of like trousery looks, and you'd go more through towards like the evening wear, and you're almost like kind of thinking of your customer in that way, like have we got enough, so, you know, a red carpet or this. Obviously he's not doing that probably consciously, but it's kind of interesting to see the run of show like this.
It looks a lot more commercial than past seasons.
a lot more.
Yeah.
Like looks like certain kind of styles being repeated slightly and kind of standing out in your mind.
And you wouldn't, like these, I wouldn't say this row particularly, oh, stop 1 sec. Was, if you kind of said that apart, who would you say that was? You wouldn't necessarily say that's Y Project, but you would on looks 1 to 6, but on these, like, that could be Balenciaga, that could be like...
Well, it feels like this season, he is trying to become a lot more commercial. Because he's doing the sunglasses and the bags, and maybe it's kind of a... He's been doing the...
Probably just trying to kind of make the most of the interest that he's getting.
Yeah, it's really great, like that's great.
What are you pointing at there?
Sorry, the black and white kind of like drapey. It's like a drapey sort of cape, but also quite like a Scottish widow, which like is an amazing...
From where my angle it looks quite like ski wear, but maybe I'm just like
But you're not getting
Scottish
a
widow ski wear.
Scottish widow cape, you know, like
Yeah,
the
okay.
hood could go on as you're skiing, and then she's wearing like a sort of sexy pencil skirt.
I just love that, but that's the nice thing about Y Project is the diversity in kind of characters and who the people are. Like it's like reading a book, or kind of when you look at Y Project, you see so many different references come out, and so many, it sparks such different
very
things
eclectic.
in different people's minds.
Yeah. It's like the dichotomies that are interesting. You have like the medieval puff sleeve, you have the sportswear, you have the kind of like 90s like obvious subculture reference that everyone uses, but he's kind of like pushed it and pushed it and pushed it.
Yeah.
It is interesting though with a show like this, like if we're looking at it now and kind of breaking down the pieces, like, you know, that pink jacket to me is like, but like, you know, there are pieces that you could argue there is something for everyone.
Yeah.
But often with a show that has styling like this, people wouldn't look at it because someone who was looking for like the perfect, like long pink coat like that wouldn't necessarily go to a collection like this.
Yeah. I think it has, although there's sort of something for everyone, it does have an attitude to it, which I think is quite specific.
It's not easily attainable.
Yeah. And I think you sort of got to have a kind of confidence to wear it.
It's kind of a reward for hard work.
I've noticed he does a lot. He likes a nice plush carpet on this.
Yeah, there you go. He's got an actual red carpet
Yeah,
now.
the last season was a nice carpet as well.
And also the setting is quite plush this time, because, you know, before he's previously done it in like a 90s underground or like something like that. Like maybe
The menswear was the menswear in June, was like super beautiful outside in Paris, wasn't it? It felt very kind of garden.
yeah. Interesting.
I wonder if the red carpet is just like, you know, a very, very direct nod to the fact that people are wearing this on the red carpet.
Yeah.
You know, like
And the
Beyonce
fact
wore the
he's
big
got
ass
loads of
boots
dresses.
in one of her recent videos. Like, you know, Rihanna's wearing it. Like they are inadvertently, even though his campaigns, it's like friends and family, you know, he's got massive celebrity faces wearing the clothes.
Yeah.
Because it's so fun. Like, I think it's such a fun... If you're a Rihanna and you can wear whatever you want, then I think Y Project is a really fun brand to experiment with. And I think that stylists probably felt that. I think definitely as photographers, like, I would love to shoot it. I think it's very pleasing to be able to play with yourself. Oh.
Is it, Britt? No, but I completely hear what you're saying. I think it also, like, you know, Y Project gives... really threw me there. Y Project definitely gives people in the creative industries the room to, you know, explore that and to create images in particular with clothes that have, you know, very different dimensions and volumes. It's definitely something to pick out on. Stop.
I just need to get it out and then I'll be fine.
I think it is that, but it's different. It still feels urban. It still feels kind of it's come from what.
I don't know. I'm not convinced about that thing now. You know, he was very much sort of put in the box of like a streetwear, but I don't feel that this is streetwear. Yes, there are like, you know, nods to sportswear so much, but that kind of bracket has become so broad anyway. I don't know. Is that relevant? Is it relevant to call Y Project a streetwear brand?
But maybe it's just because the hype brands have been streetwear, so he's become another hype brand, and then it naturally gets put in that streetwear bracket. The only one who isn't is like Jacquemus, but he's kind of got like elements of that as well. Like in terms of like it's quite Jacquemus girl is very different from a Y Project girl, but they're like similar in their kind of staunch themselvesness in a way.
I think the streetwear thing is becoming a bit obsolete in of itself, and maybe
quite lazy.
This is the next iteration of it.
Yeah.
And I would say that with this is autumn winter, isn't it? Nice carpet again. But yeah, I would say with the new collection that we've just been talking about, that's a way of moving it forward, and it does feel really quite commercial, but really luxurious. And it has elements of streetwear in it.
Yeah.
And were we saying streetwear or sports?
Well, we were saying that I think there are elements of sportswear, but I think I'm interested as to whether, you know, that thing makes people refer to something as
It's just a
streetwear.
pick and mix thing that everyone's doing now, because there are so many references available to everyone on the internet at all times of day. That's how people dress, isn't it? Just picking them.
It's like everyone's constant question about redefining luxury. What is luxury now? Like this is a version of luxury, and it doesn't. And exactly like you're saying, that word is becoming slightly obsolete now. I think it's just like luxury has become a merging of all of those things.
And it's like what you make it yourself, and that sort of bespoke.
Yeah, I mean it's almost Gucci. It's like interesting to look at it against Gucci and all the kind of like the eclectic references that he makes are similar in a way, and that's never kind of called streetwear or sportswear.
No,
And there's the
totally, yeah.
obvious kind of varsity and like tracksuity things, but I think they're quite interesting to compare.
It is quite expensive. Floral, if you put it in that streetwear category, Y Project is higher than kind of the others. So,
But then does that make it not streetwear? Does that make it a luxury brand
'Cause I
because
think-
the price point has become escalated?
So I think the difference is when I think about obviously the obvious differences between that and Gucci is that Gucci you have like hand embroidered pieces and that's what gives it that luxury term. But I think with Y Project it's more expensive, but it does have that in the different.
But also, I think Gucci will always be seen as a luxury brand because of the heritage of the brand, and I think it's very easy when lots of people didn't really think about Y Project before Glenn Martin's specifically. So when people first began thinking about the brand, it was just easy to put it into that box. And I wonder, do we think it's moving out of that box? Is what he's doing becoming, more aligned with the shows that you're seeing in Paris, like Gucci, like, Jacquemus, people thinking about it like that, rather than, the emerging brands bracket. Marcus Almeida showed in Paris recently, Marine Serre, there's a lot of hype about these kinds of brands. Y Project sort of feels like they're on the verge of something.
It's like, I hate this word because it's so like marketing speak, but like it's like disruptive.
Oh, yeah.
But it is, do you know what I mean? Like the Paris Fashion Week like 5 years ago was so different to, before Y Project, before Vetements, before Jacquemus. It was very Parisian and quite archaic and beautiful and fashion, but anyone also coming in from the outside, I think it was like a real slog to kind of get anywhere. And then these other brands have kind of popped up, like, and not necessarily from Paris themselves. Obviously, he's Belgian, and those guys are Russian. So it is interesting in terms of how it's changed Paris.
It's often attributed to the Vetements effect. I remember first kind of talking and thinking about Y Project, and it very much like came out of what people were calling the Vetements effect. But I don't know, to me it feels like they are moving past that. But perhaps they'll always sort of have that umbrella.
I think it's cleverer, which is like the key thing. Like Vetements, I think it was amazing in terms of like the kind of watershed moment, but I think it almost had an expiry date. Whereas I think because of the constant deconstructing and the kind of interesting dichotomies that Y Project encapsulates, I think it has more longevity as a kind of actual luxury brand, past being a young, hypey brand.
Sure.
Yeah. I think it has more dimensions than Vetements had. So there's more to unpick. It's not kind of like that, oh, that's the joke. Move on every season, which makes it kind of sustain interest.
And I think also it feels like with Vetements they were sort of creating things to create a buzz and a hype and to make it a sort of a headline, a newspaper headline. Whereas I think with Glenn Martin's, I don't think he's trying to be funny. I think he's taking it very seriously and he wants to be in this for the long run. And he, doesn't mean he wants to become the head of an LVMH brand, but I think that he has a lot to give for his brand for Y Project.
He's still the label's quite young.
Yeah.
He hasn't been. He's been there 5 years? And in that time, he's already had quite a massive impact on sales, and he's put his own imprint on it quite strongly. So I reckon that he'll just go even further with it.
Yeah.
I wonder if he will end up getting headhunted by like a Givenchy
I
or
really hope not.
I reckon he will though, because all those brands are so, there's such high turnover in those brands now, and they are all looking to there was all their like buzz about Jacquemus going to Celine and whoever. I feel like they're like the next gen of like the Riccardo Tiscis, the Phoebe Philos,
it does feel like with Paris, people are looking at the shows and talking, but everyone's just kind of got their breath held. What's going to happen at Celine?
Oh, yeah.
You are. Yeah, but I'm when I was looking at Paris and thinking about Paris in general, it sort of did for me feel like people were mainly looking at the big luxury houses again, and not so much at designers like Y Project. I wonder why that sort of pendulum is swinging, because for a long time.
Well, it's like resources, like Saint Laurent can make their models walk on water. The show is like high and obviously amazing. And then it's difficult, isn't it? You either have like that strange, like come to this like grimy club in like downtown, whatever, and like at a weird time and like everyone's all a bit excited, or you have that like showy thing. So it's like, where's the middle ground? That will be interesting when these brands grow up slightly. Like, where do they go from that underground scene, but they do not have that, that money?
Maybe this is the middle ground.
Yeah, maybe
and showing this.
I think it's really interesting what you were saying, Charlotte, about styling the
Yeah.
clothes, because if you, as a stylist, really enjoy using Y Project's clothing and you like photographing it, then that must be really to his credit, and that's why you see it on girls like Bella Hadid and Rihanna so often, because presumably their stylists feel a similar way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so fun. Well, it's like, it's pieces as well. And also, he hasn't done that annoying thing that PRs do, which is like full look policy all the time.
Yeah.
Which is like the most dread of all time. So you can pull it apart and it does work with other things. Even if it is incongruous, like that's kind of fun.
I'm so interested as well about what it's like to put on. It's like some of those pieces, like literally, where are you getting your limbs
There's
in?
like I think it's a few seasons ago, but the jeans that were super,
poppers.
and that were super long, and then you had to like pull all the way up.
Yeah.
But it makes it, I don't know, it's just, I think it's interesting and refreshing to see and
like
to
the challenge.
feel and to it's like it makes it a
I
little
remember
bit
trying on one of those like very, very, very long armed pieces.
Yeah.
It's just like, blah, blah, blah. But it did.
Slender Man.
Yeah, exactly. I did. Yeah, not so slender man. I like was like, walking around like. Ugh.
But they have a lot of stockists as well, don't they? So
completely.
I think people are seeing the show and thinking, I do want to buy that, and people are going to buy it. So I think it's clever how he's kind of got that middle ground of being creative and interesting, but also.
And just looking at these garments, like these two looks next to each other on this sort of like middle.
one?
So we're looking at the middle section now.
Okay, thank you.
Class. Looking at so the look on the left, which is kind of like the quad of velvets.
Very school themed now.
I'm getting into the swing. But
Getting into the
this kind of quad of velvets, that's kind of quite like easily wearable and does have this. It's channeling a lot of different things. And then in the middle, it's got that very obviously normcore, like
Poncho?
it's not. I think it's not quite a poncho, but it's like a.
I saw that in the menswear show as well.
It's very gappy.
It's beautiful. You can see it bigger. Yeah, it's very like gappy jumper, and it looks like it's been styled over sort of like a similar variation of what we're seeing
Interesting.
on the left.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, I don't know, that to me seems like a proposition of you can sort of wear this quite elegantly sort of sassy look, or you can just like dump a big jumper over it. We cater for you both.
We cater for the sexy vixen and the gap year student.
I think the look on
The Madonna Hall complex.
left, in the middle, the one on the left is really it's not, it doesn't look like a,
The
kind
white
of,
one.
yeah.
I think Rick Owens eat that one.
He likes those cutouts though, doesn't he?
Yeah.
What those chaps that he did.
But I think as well, going to that femininity thing, it's the way of being able to feel being not girly, I think he said more elegant, but also being like a little bit sexy.
He's
a
thinking
little
about
bit
opening a standalone store. He doesn't have his own store yet, does he?
Oh, interesting. I don't know.
Yeah.
I wonder if this is his way of saying,
Here I
commercially
come.
successful,
Yeah.
kind of attracting a more.
Yeah.
And
Well,
maybe that's what you
making
mean.
bags, like doing the kind of it bag thing.
Because is that his next step? As we're all saying, this is his middle ground. What is his next step to be?
It's interesting seeing him in terms of like London designers who have an equivalent. I know we talked about Paris, but I think like Martine Rose and Simmons Pirmaine are kind of brands who have that kind of like very conceptual, but also have kind of veered into like some commercial territory, even like whilst maintaining their ethos. And like that's, I guess Simmons Pirmaine and Martine Rose have kind of done it more quietly.
Sure.
But it's interesting to compare the two.
I wonder what his goals are and what he does want to kind of, as you said, they've done a little bit more quietly. Does he want the big title?
I get the sense that he wants to make this into a really successful commercial label. He seems very confident. It feels very confident to me as a collection.
Yeah. I mean, I do want loads of it.
Same.
I mean, that's always a win.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to touch on quickly this sort of modesty idea. We've looked at a few of the looks that are maybe a bit more showing, and we've said that before that he's always liked these slices. And it has been interesting looking at Paris about since the Me Too movement, there's definitely still a dialogue there, and particularly looking at Dior and Maria Grazia Curie showed these looks where she was referencing ballet, but she wanted to talk about sort of freedom for the form and the way that she was designing without corsetry and trying to free female bodies. And I'm interested in how Glenn Martin kind of plays into this narrative, whether this collection, whether he's conscious of that, whether that's something he's interested in, or whether it's something that he's just kind of always done with his clothing and shown exactly what he wants to show. I mean, you know, there's a sort of tension about showing, you know, pants like these very, very tiny denim ones, and the Saint Laurent show is quite heavily criticised for how much legginess.
Yeah.
Or is it just something that, you know, Glenn Martin's, it doesn't affect this brand?
I think it's like in terms of how he looks at gender, it's quite similar. Like, okay, there's a boy or a girl in front of me, or however else they identify themselves. It's probably the same in terms of modesty. It's like, I fancy doing a cutout on this, but then, oh, actually, like a massive jumper will look good on this. I think that's probably like not part of his thinking in quite the same way that maybe other designers have done.
I don't think he's ever designed a look for a woman that's objectified her in a sexual way. To me, the clothes that he designs for women that look sexy look as if they're done from the point of view of a woman who wants to look really sexy.
They're in control of it.
Yeah.
And also, I think that because he's always taken that stance of it being very like gender, I hate that word, fluid, but to me, that I think he's like almost beyond that. I wouldn't apply that argument to this collection.
No.
But also there's that luxury of choice in everything. It's that you do have those revealing looks, but also you have completely covered up head to toe looks. And I think that's probably the smartest way to do it, because it is presenting, you know, what you want is there. You just have to look for it. Whereas if you do look at a Saint Laurent show, it's like, unless you are extremely body confident, this isn't the brand for you.
Yeah.
And in modern feminism, you know, choice is kind of the pioneering.
And he's always cast models that look very, you know, they look different to each other. So I think he's been way ahead of the curve. He's really avant-garde in that way.
Yeah, there's some more diversity in body types than the Saint Laurent show, which is notoriously always quite very thin models.
I can't quite tell what the time is actually, but I did just want to finally ask whether we were sort of sad not to see the UGG.
I'm so sad not seeing the UGG.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I feel like I've seen quite a lot of UGG.
Yeah, I'm quite
really.
Good for UGG. It's good that he doesn't then kind of rely upon it as kind of an easy way to get coverage as well.
Yeah, but look, they just will go at every look. It's such a sad omission.
Draw them on in your mind.
Yeah, that one with Uggs, the flowery dress with Uggs, perfect. Very Sienna Miller, 2005.
Oh my God, yeah. Very Glasgow.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Are we going to end on the Ugg?
I do want to end on the UGG. I think we should give Glenn Martin's a round of applause, because I always like to do it. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining me today. Let's give Glenn Martin's a round of applause.
And you.